Welcome to Maritime Pakistan, your gateway to the fascinating world of oceans and the opportunities they present to every one of us. Our goal is to explore the shared heritage of the seas and oceans to achieve global prosperity. Today's discussion explores the book The Sea in History, The Ancient World. We're going to focus on the 7th chapter, which is all about fishing and the interactions between the middle valley of the Senegal River and the Senegal-Mauritania Atlantic coast during the last millennium BC. It's a real archaeological mystery.
So I want you to picture this. It's 3,000 years ago in West Africa. You've got two completely different worlds. On one hand, you have a community living right on the Atlantic coast. They're fishers, they're herders. Then hundreds of kilometers inland, you've got another group, farmers, cattle raisers, settled along the fertile banks of the Senegal River. Now on the surface, they seem totally separate, right? But somehow they were connected. The real question is how? And what in the world did fishing have to do with it?
Okay, so here's how we're going to crack this case. First, we'll get to know these two ancient worlds on their own terms. You know, life by the ocean and life in the river valley. Then, the fun part begins. We'll uncover the clues that link them. We'll look at a massive climate shift that changed everything. And finally, we'll see how the simple act of fishing ended up forging a brand new future. Our story kicks off in the last millennium BC. And you have to understand, this was a time of huge environmental change all across West Africa. We're going to zoom in on two very different places, the Atlantic coastline of what's now Senegal and Mauritania, and then, way inland, the lush Middle Senegal River Valley. First up, let's head to the coast and meet the masters of the coastline. These are folks whose entire lives were shaped by the rhythm of the ocean. Now, these people were unbelievably resourceful. Their whole economy was built around what the sea could give them. I mean, they were collecting shellfish, fishing with all kinds of gear, nets, harpoons, you name it, and even hunting marine mammals. But they were also herders, walking their livestock right along the shore. It was this amazing, diverse way of life. And get this, their villages were often built right on top of these huge mounds of discarded shells, which we call shell middens. It's like a physical record of their history. A perfect example of these coastal pros is a group archaeologists called the Boudhida culture. They were thriving around 500 BC, and they were just masters of adaptation, blending herding with all the rich resources the sea had to offer. But the really important thing to remember about them, the thing that makes them stand out, is their pottery. It had a very unique style, and trust me, that's going to be a huge clue later on. All right, let's pack up and travel. We're going about 300 kilometers east, inland, to a world that could not be more different. We're in the Isle of Morphil now, this lush, green island in the Middle Senegal River Valley. It was literally the lifeblood of the whole region. And what's so fascinating is how cleverly they used the land. They had it divided into 3 zones, all based on the river's yearly flood. So you had the wallow, the floodplain, perfect for growing sorghum after the water went down. Then you had the jerry, these high dunes where they'd graze their livestock. And right in between, in the jingle, that's where they built their villages. It was this incredibly smart, sustainable system, all tuned to the river's pulse. Just look at this place. This maze of rivers and channels made it a total paradise. Now you'd think, a place with this much water, the people living there must have been expert fishermen from day one, right? Well, that's where the story gets really interesting.
Actually, the archaeology from one of the earliest settlements, a site called Walaldé, tells a completely different story. The first folks who settled here around 800 BC were mainly farmers and herders. Their whole world revolved around crops and animals. Sure, they had fish, but fishing just wasn't a big part of their culture, at least not at first.
So, okay, we've got our coastal fishing experts and our inland farming folks. Two totally different lifestyles. So how in the world do we know they were connected? This is where we put on our detective hats and start piecing the clues together.
And here it is. This is the archaeological smoking gun. Just look at this comparison. The pottery they dug up at the inland site, Walaldé, is stylistically identical to the pottery from that coastal Boudhida culture we talked about. We're talking the same pointed rims, the same geometric designs, even the same kind of stuff mixed into the clay. That is not a coincidence. That's cold, hard proof of direct contact across 300 kilometers.
But finding this shared pottery style, well, that was just the first breadcrumb. Another discovery at the inland site pointed to an even bigger network of trade.
This is so cool. Archaeologists at Walaldé also found copper objects, and through chemical analysis they were able to trace the metal all the way back to its source, the mines at Akjoujt in modern-day Mauritania, which is way over closer to the coast. So this tells us that these supposedly isolated farmers were actually part of a huge trade network, getting their hands on valuable stuff from hundreds of kilometers away. Okay, so we've established the what. We know for a fact there was a connection. But that just opens up the next big question. Why? Why did these connections suddenly form? Well, the answer wasn't in the people, but in the world around them. It was a massive shift in the climate.
This timeline really lays it all out. Around 500 BC, things started to change, big time. The Sahara Desert began to expand, and the whole region got a lot drier. This forced people to move south, looking for safer, more welcoming places to live, like the river valley. And then look at that last entry. It's only after this big migration, between about 380 and 171 BC, that we finally see the first real evidence of fishing gear, clay net weights, popping up at that inland site, Walaldé.
And this isn't just a theory. The archaeologist Alioune Dème, whose work this is all based on, puts it perfectly. He says, the data shows that this period corresponds to a climatic deterioration, pushing Saharan populations towards more hospitable areas. It was a direct response to a massive environmental crisis.
So, this huge climate-driven migration didn't just mean more people showing up at the river, it sparked a complete revolution in how everybody there lived. It was a moment of pure adaptation and innovation.
You can almost see it happening in stages. First, you get the population boom. More people arriving, which we can literally see in the layers of dirt at Walaldé. And with new people comes new knowledge. It's almost certain that these newcomers, who might have come from the coast or other places where fishing was crucial, brought their skills with them. All of a sudden, fishing goes from being a side gig to a major food source. And eventually, that leads to specialization, where you start seeing entire communities dedicated just to fishing.
So when you boil it all down, what you have is this powerful, ancient story about human resilience. A really tough time, a changing climate, forced people to innovate. It brought different groups together, it led to this incredible transfer of vital skills, and it completely transformed a way of life in a way that would define the region for centuries.
And that really leaves us with a big question to think about, one that connects this ancient story directly to us right now. How is our own changing environment reshaping our communities and our world today? It's a pretty powerful reminder that adaptation isn't just something from history. It's a story that's still being written. We hope that you liked today's video. Please share your comments and subscribe to explore other similar opportunities. Post your questions in the comments section for future videos.